Righty. Setting things in order. Right, looks like we're all set. Hello, guys. I hope you're all doing well. Welcome to our YouTube live. This is, of course, an ask me anything session. So I'm not going to do any presentation or any talking. This session is largely for all of you guys who are logging in to ask your questions about anything related to a master's degree or a bachelor's degree. I see first comment saying I'm going for a bachelor's, which is fantastic. We do help with a lot of undergrad applications as well. It's just the volumes for grad are so high that people think we do only grad. So by all means, ask me about master's degrees, ask me about bachelor's degrees, ask me about MBAs in India, general career guidance, and all of that, right? And I'd be happy to answer all of your questions. I budgeted about 45 minutes or so for this session. So I'm going to be, on here answering your questions for about 40 or 45 minutes. Usually with lives, it's been a while since I've done one, but we often, because of the number of questions, we don't have enough time to cover all the questions within that 45-minute window. If we are not able to, you can always schedule a free consultation call with my team and have those questions answered one by one. So I see some questions coming in already, and I'll jump right into them as the clock takes to 6 o'clock. And as I keep answering them, keep your questions coming in, guys. Alrighty. I'm heading to the MS in AI program at Indiana University Bloomington this fall. Are there any suggestions you have as to what I can do to prepare in the upcoming months before I fly in August? To be very honest, Arun, at this point in time, there's nothing that you can really prep for, because if you're asking in the context of taking perhaps another online course or upskilling yourself in some way, I honestly don't think this month and a half is going to make a difference. If you got your visa, congratulations. Just enjoy your time at home, make the most of it, because you may not be able to come back for a while. And just prep for how you're going to settle down, figure out your accommodation. Maybe one thing you can do, actually, which a lot of people don't do enough, is if you've got your Indiana University .edu ID, which is your official student ID, you can absolutely write to professors and write to any other contacts that you may have at the university already about TAs, RAs, and on-campus jobs. Once you have a .edu ID, it's more likely that you'll get a reply from professors as well. So you can say, hey, I'm going to be coming in. I probably will be taking this class with you in the first semester. Are there any classes where I can TA or RA? You can send them your resume and say, this is the coursework that I've done. Maybe that will help you get a little bit of a head start in terms of the TA and RA search. But apart from that, nothing much you can do in terms of upskilling. Indiana's a good university, and congratulations on that. And Indiana as a state is very, very underrated as well. The big advantage with Indiana, which a lot of people don't realize, is that by and large there are only two major universities for the entire state, and that state is a fairly decent industrial hub. You have Purdue and you have Indiana, right? So the supply demand, there is always strong demand for graduates in that state, because there are only two major universities, unlike some other states. So congrats on that. I think you do very well. You can go ahead and maybe write for the TA and RA. You have a .edu ID. Maybe you'll get that. Alrighty. All right. Can I apply to MEM without the GRE having a GPA of 7.92, provided I can get a good university? You can apply, and the importance of the GRE for the MEM has only been diminishing, year after year since COVID. Honestly, Himanshu, your GPA is not particularly bad. It would be solid mid-level, fairly decent GPA, to be perfectly honest. So without the GRE is fine. I still think you can get into one of the top 10 programs at least. Last year I had several, at least 30 or 40 students between 30 and 40 get into some of the top 5 programs as well, without the GRE, right? But again, I don't know the rest of your profile, right? I had a student with a GPA of a 7.2 get into Purdue. I had another with somebody in the early sevens get into Dartmouth as well, right? But they're from BITS NIT tier 2 IIT level, so that also matters. The rest of your profile matters too. It's very holistic. You can get your profile evaluated by us, and my team will give you an estimate of what tier of university you can get into based on that, even though I've given you a fairly broad and accurate one. So yeah, you absolutely can. And if you're doing at MEM or any master's degree, you know who the best in the business is, right? All right. What are your thoughts on the ISB YLP program? Thank you for that wonderful question. This is something that a lot of you guys might consider or should consider. The name is Masters in Management for Young Leaders. No, it's the PGPYL. So ISB doesn't offer an MBA. It doesn't offer an MBA at all. Their program is called the Postgraduate Program in Management, right? So it's a PGP. That is their flagship program as well. The 1 year, MBA that you call it. It's not an MBA. It's a PGP. So the PGPYL is the PGP for young leaders, which means people who have less than 2 years of experience are eligible for this program. It's a longer program, which is 16 months. It's also a cheaper program, right? This program, in fact, is positioned as a competitor to the traditional IIM MBAs, because most folks who get into the IIM MBAs are people who are freshers or who have less than 2 years of experience. This is the equivalent. ISB typically had people with about 3 to 5 years of work experience, maybe even more in the traditional PGP program. So the PGPYL is a solid program. Your career outcomes are going to be just as good. It is also going to be extremely selective, because last year I understand that they wanted to keep the cohort or capped at about 100 people. I don't know if they're going to increase it. But it's a fantastic program. It's not an MIM at all. It's as good as any Indian MBA, right? So it's one that is certainly worth considering. How is CHU DH Dominguez Hills for bachelor's in CS or MIS in Spain? My friend, this is the first time I'm really hearing of this university. The CSUs itself, a lot of them are not great. Maybe East Bay, maybe LA, decent. Now you're going into a very obscure CSU, and I wouldn't recommend you do that, right? You'd want to do a bachelor's degree at least a decent place. I'm not saying top tier, but at least that is reasonably reputed. All right. I'm currently in my final year of a 3 years bachelor's in management studies with a major in finance, and I'm looking for my MS in finance abroad, mostly after a year or two of work. The best countries. Thank you for that fantastic question. And the best countries for finance, undoubtedly, number one would be the US, largely because of the fintech boom. Finance in the US versus finance in other countries is that even if you have a pure MS finance program in the US, there is going to be an element of tech in it. There's going to be an element of analytics, an element of programming, right? The reason being, a lot of roles, or the number of roles in fintech and financial analytics, are far broader in the US than general pure finance roles, right? In any case, if you're looking at the US as a destination, you should be, and somebody with limited experience, you should be looking to break into the fintech or through the analytics route before you go into more client-facing roles. But even if you don't, definitely the number of jobs, even in pure finance, are strongest in the US. It's a good destination. Followed by France. I think France is also proven to be a strong destination if you want to do an MS in finance. It has a good stay back period. You can stay back and look for a job for 2 years. While you're there for 2 years looking for a job, you can also do part-time to supplement yourself. So it is, absolutely a strong degree to do. And in France as well. The UK has been a little bit of a paradox and a conundrum, because the situation has just been going worse and worse and worse. Typically, in the past, if you went to places like an LBS or an LSE, or even a Cambridge for that matter, people were working very hard to secure a role, and they were able to secure roles, over time. But again, the situation in the UK has been not so great. But again, if you want a wider variety of countries to choose from, because I want to give you all those options, the UK, provided you go to an LBS, LSE, Cambridge level of university, might be a decent option. But US best, followed by France, then followed by the UK at one of these top 2 or 3 schools, nothing below that. All right, sorry, I just answered this one. Right. Will the MEM degree hold weight if we come back to India after completing a degree in the USA? No. Can we get management related jobs in India with an MEM degree? Yes. MEM in USA versus MBA in tier 2, tier 3 IMs. What is your objective? Like, if you want to work in the US for some time, even if it's not permanently settling down, if you want to work for 2 or 3 or 4 years, then doing not just an MEM but any degree in the US makes sense. Just doing a degree and coming back straight is not going to add any value because recruiters here are not going to value it at all, right? Unless it's just an MBA which they understand and an MBA from a university they've heard of. It's not going to add too much value, right? Just doing the degree and coming back straight is not a prudent financial decision, and it's not a prudent decision in terms of growing your career either. You're not going to get that much of a boost. On the contrary, post MEM, because the career opportunities at great companies are so strong over recent years, if you work for 2 or 3 years, you're not only forget repaying the degree, which where the financial prudence and the financial sense comes in. You also have valuable experience at a top tier company doing work that you typically will not do at your age or your level in India, right? So you bring in very, very strong experience, which then recruiters will value to a great degree, and that's where doing the degree abroad, not just in MEM, any degree will make sense, right? Now, should you do MEM in USA versus MBA in a tier 2 or 3 IIM? That depends on you. Right? If you get into one of the IIMs and you're okay staying in India, absolutely it makes sense. But if you want to move and work in the USA, then obviously the IIM is not going to get you that, right? So you're doing an apples to oranges comparison. You have to be clear about where you want to be, where you want to work, and do any master's degree abroad or in the US for that matter, or anywhere abroad. Only if you're prepared and willing and have the desire to work for 2 or 3 years. Don't do the degree and come back straight. It doesn't make sense in any regard. This is the case with MEM, but this is the case with computer science, the case with MIS. It's the case even with an MBA, right? It's only going to make sense if you gain experience in that particular country and leverage that before you come back. What is the value of technical research papers for somebody who's looking to apply for an MEM? It's good to have, but it's not compulsory. This was something that I've always been reiterating for a number of years, and this was further reiterated after I interacted extensively with admissions committees while I was at Duke, Northwestern, Hopkins, Dartmouth, Purdue, and Tufts, and all of these fantastic places, right? They want good engineers coming in. And of course, if you have a technical research paper which is solid bit of work addressing a pertinent problem, it's published in a reputed journal, then it is some sort of proof that you're a good engineer, right, per se. So yes, it can be valuable. It's not compulsory. You can show you're a good engineer through projects. You can show it through internships. You can show it through a full-time work experience as well, right? So it's not very, very valuable, but if you have them and if they're conveyed properly in your SOP, they can be very, very strong. Hi, what are the job prospects for freshers in MSc advanced AI programs from top universities in Ireland? Don't go to Ireland if you have less work experience or no work experience. Jobs are there, yes. It might seem like a more stable political thing and all of that, which is again a load of nonsense, honestly. But if you are a fresher, I wouldn't recommend doing any degree in Ireland because just the volume of jobs are fewer, right? And those few jobs will always prefer people with more work experience, right? If you are a fresher going into tech, there's no other better destination than the US at this point. And honestly, I'm saying this in all complete conviction and honesty, because look, in terms of my own interests, it doesn't matter to me whether you apply to Ireland, whether you apply to the US, whether you apply to UK, whether you apply to Australia, right? We charge the same for all. So I don't gain anything by telling you that the US is a better destination. I'm telling you this because it's just a fact. If you're looking to go into AI and computer science, there is no other better country, especially for a fresher, right? Where the number of jobs are simply unmatched in the US, right? So consider that very, very strongly. Maybe not Ireland as a good option. Think about the Netherlands. It's slightly better, slightly more mature tech economy, slightly more mature hiring situation for foreign students. So maybe you'll be better off there. But I cannot recommend that very strongly, even though honestly it'll be easier to get you into an Irish university that's decent than a top US one. In your own interest, I would not do that, or at least apply to other countries as an alternative as well. with less number of international students that apply this year, I don't know how you've made that conclusion, as many are backing out. No. So here's the thing, right? I've been in this business long enough, and we've been in this business during COVID also, right? And eventually, what we realize is if there's a desire and a plan to go abroad, you will go abroad, because okay, there are certain reasons why you're considering the degree abroad, right? You're not thinking about it for time pass. It's not like घर पे बैठ के कुछ करना नहीं है तो जाके करेंगे. There is a desire, right? Why you want to go there. And eventually, as the job market is picking up at this point in time, whether it's sooner or later, people will pick those plans back up, right? Because there is a reason why you want to move. There's a reason why you want to do a foreign degree in the first place. And whatever news is coming out, which is largely being hyped, it will fade out eventually, right? And at that point, people will still apply. So don't assume, or it's too early to assume. Like, even if you want to make that assumption later and you think that okay, nobody's going to apply, it's way too early to make that assumption that not as many people are going to apply. People thought the same thing last year as well, but all the top MEM programs mentioned their highest number of applications received overall, right? So don't assume that, and don't try and control what other people are going to do, because eventually they're all going to apply, because again, all of you and all of us and everybody around is applying also for a reason, right? The thought has come for a reason, and that thought usually comes through, and the conviction comes through overall. If getting into work experience without work ex is your concern, look, the way MEM programs, or for that matter even CS programs, all the others distribute their classes, right? They set aside targets saying that we want to fill a certain number of this class of people without work ex, certain number with around 2 years of work ex, certain others with above 3 years of work ex. They have a metric, right? That they have targets that we want this kind of a diversity. So when you're applying to an MEM or a CS, again, I'm talking about programs that are open to freshers, right? If you're talking to me about MBA, that's not the case. They're not going to take a fresher, right? But programs that are open to all kinds, they want to maintain that sort of different categorization. Therefore, if you're somebody without work ex, you'll be competing with the applicant pool without work ex only. It's not like you can take the spot of somebody who has work ex, or somebody who has work ex taking your spot, right? They have varied thought process as to why they want freshers. Again, whether that's a justified thought process or no is a separate thing, right? Each one has their own in terms of admissions committees. But you don't have a significant disadvantage applying to MEM without work ex, right? Your likelihood of getting in essentially remains the same. So don't mix up all of these factors. Admissions committees, the way they think, the factors that they have, some factors which are not in your control also, are very, very complex. It's not, even though it can seem very convenient to simplify it like this, it's not the case, right? All right, I've completed my civil engineering BTech with a GPA of 8.28. Now I'm working in Qatar, Doha. I want to do a master's in civil. Is it the right time to look into US for the master's? It's absolutely the right time, but I would not do a master's in civil engineering, right? Civil engineering, when you go into it, you're putting yourself in a niche where not too many companies are hiring and sponsoring for H-1B visas. So I don't think the choice of degree is correct. But is it the right time to do a master's degree? Yes, because the job market is already recovering. Folks are getting jobs. And again, by this, I'm saying only people are going to good universities. Right now, there are dime a dozen who keep going to the US for the sake of immigrating, not thinking about what university or tier of university or program they're going to, only concerned about, okay, I want to get into the US in the cheapest possible cost, and therefore they're going to random name, no name universities. Right? For them, I'm not commenting. I'm talking about the good ones, right? They have started to secure jobs, and the job market is seeing a little bit of an upswing at this point in time, right? The way the US economy is set up, guys, and this is something that I'm addressing in a video that's going to come out soon as well. It is a wave, right? It goes up and it goes down, it goes up and goes down. Even when it is down, it takes longer to secure a job, but everybody does eventually find a job, right? It can be a stressful time, but they do, right? Now, if you look at past lulls in the job market, and this lull is not even a big lull compared to that, the 2008 recession, right? And at least, our lifetimes, I was an adult by then already. I don't know if you guys were, but during our lifetime, at least, that was the worst recession that we've seen. After that, also, the job market started picking up in 2010, and people who joined the university in 2008 took advantage of that rush, upwards, where companies started to hire again. Same thing after COVID, right? You saw insane opportunities and people rushing to the US in 2022, because graduates who are graduating in 2022, who are their relatives and friends, were saying that it is fantastic, come, it's all great and stuff like that, right? But those guys started college at the bravest possible time, right? Which was the 2020 fall intake. That means they started university in August of 2020, where COVID was new. COVID was at its peak. We didn't even know whether it was going to go away and what the fate of the world was going to be. But they graduated into an ultimate jump in the job market. Now, I'm not saying that, okay, now once you go, you'll 100% jump into, absolute, upward swing of the job market. Nobody can predict that. But things go up and down, up and down, up and down, but the size of the economy matters. And when you are in the largest economy in the world, the largest tech economy in the world, you're always in a good place. But not for civil engineering. If you're looking at something related, I would at least recommend maybe considering a construction management degree, which at least broadens your horizons a little bit. All right, what are tier one MEM universities in the USA accepting spring admissions? Not too many. In the past, Duke used to offer it, Cornell used to offer it, but I don't think they are anymore. The only big tier one that I can think of is probably Purdue is going to have it. Purdue also, just some inside information, guys. They've had a record number of applications, and their MEM program at this point is the most selective after the CS program in terms of acceptance rate. So they've given a lot of admits this year, and a lot of them, pretty much all of them, have said yes to it, right? Like a lot of them have said yes. And therefore, that class is very, very full. And you have to understand, fall plus spring is one cohort for them. So it's one total number of students that they're dealing with simultaneously. They try to cap it at about 100. Right. And I know that the number of spots they might offer in the spring this time are not going to be as high. My recommendation, even though the easiest thing for me to do is to sell you a spring intake and try and create some panic and make you apply early, is to, if you're applying for MEM, just drop the plans of the spring, be more patient and apply to the fall. And of course, if you want to apply to the fall or the spring, we're around to help. But I don't think a spring for MEM specifically is good. You're compromising so much on a lot of issues. All right, I have 1 year experience in the project planning team in Dubai as a graduate engineering trainee. I think that's what a GT means. Will it add an advantage in my resume? Yes. When applying for an MEM course, absolutely yes. Yes, it's always beneficial to get any time of full-time experience, whether it's an internship, whether it's training, whether it's a full-time job. How is the University of Dayton for a master's in CS? Not very good. An interesting username. All right. Why do we avoid cybersecurity abroad? See, cybersecurity comes with its list of complications, but over the last year, and this is after I spoke to a bunch of my friends and my peers who are at Amazon and Google and the likes, who are recruiting folks, right? They're saying that the past year, demand for cybersecurity and even sponsoring H1Bs and international students has been surprisingly strong. I don't think this is a constant trend, because typically the problem used to be that anybody who was going to be recruited for a cybersecurity degree abroad, they would be subject to additional security screening, which most folks who are foreign students holding Indian passports or non-American passport would not pass by virtue of being, international candidates, right? This is extremely prevalent still in aerospace. And when I was at Northwestern, when I was at Purdue, the folks at the admissions committees were saying, please don't ask people to come and do aerospace degrees here, because they're not going to get security clearances. Irrespective of their talent, they're just not going to be eligible for these jobs. Cybersecurity was also sort of in that bad situation, but that situation is improving at this point in time. And there is a decent enough demand. But even now, I would tread with a little bit of caution. Apply to cybersecurity if you want, but I would still apply to maybe CS degrees, because it just gives you a broader set of opportunities. After that, if you want to get into cybersecurity, you can take the right electives and move in. If cybersecurity is not working out, you have the base CS degree to apply to other jobs as well. So I wouldn't say completely avoid it, but it's in your best interest to keep a broader set of options for you through the degree that you're doing. I hope that makes sense. Alrighty, I'm a third year BTech computer science student looking for a master's degree in the States. How much would it cost? How much would it cost? I'll give you an estimate. Tuition fee at cheaper universities is around the cheapest good ones. Again, if you go for trash ones, they're like very, very cheap. But any half decent one, you'll be spending tuition between $40,000 and $50,000. If you go to a moderately expensive, mid-level school, something like a UCLA, Duke, then you're looking at 65 to $70,000 in tuition. If you go for an ultra expensive one like a Columbia, you're looking at $90,000 in tuition. So it can vary anywhere between 45 to $90,000. But what people don't understand is that universities have been a little bit more friendly in aid, right? So last year, Gradvine students in total, we had about I would say 600 paying customers, about 550-ish who completed the process. They secured about $4.5 million in cumulative scholarships. Right, the scholarships on an average, if you do the math, upwards of maybe $8,000, right? Some of them secured bumper scholarships about 30 to 40,000. One student even got a 60,000 scholarship at Johns Hopkins, right? So it's not necessary that a university that on paper is more expensive will eventually work out to be more expensive for you overall. So keep that in mind. That is something that we absolutely cover when you're doing the university shortlist part, right? Like for example, some universities, the co-ops and the internships programs are so very strong that you're 100% going to get a co-op and you're 100% going to get an internship in the summer. And because you earn so much during the co-op, which is usually longer, about 6 months, or the summer internship, which is shorter, about 3 months, that you can cover an entire semester's tuition fee through what you earn itself in that period, right? So there are multiple ways in which you can cut down your costs. So anything that you find on paper, and definitely the cost estimator on the website is all inflated. So even a very expensive university could work out cheaper, and you have to understand this when you are picking them up, right? But those are roughly on paper tuition fees that you're going to see. For living costs, it's a simple calculation, unless you live very, very expensively, or unless you're living in Manhattan or downtown Los Angeles or something of that sort. You can assume that living plus food and all of that will be between $1,000 and $1,200 a month. Multiply that into the duration of the program plus your tuition fee. However, at most top universities, again, almost pretty much everybody, whether it's a professional master's program or a research-based master's program, gets either a TA, an RA, or an on-campus job, which covers your living costs as well. There are multiple ways in which you can bring it down. It's just that you have to understand and find out about those in the beginning. I haven't started my GRE prep yet. I'm targeting Purdue for MEM. Do I need to get a high grade in GRE for getting to Purdue? Usually, I've seen with candidates, if you get a 315 plus, 315 plus, it's been more than good enough for you to get an admit. At that point, if you're getting a reject with a 315 plus, it's probably not because your GRE is low. It's probably because the rest, something's wrong with the rest of your profile. So purely, if you're looking at GRE for Purdue or any top MEM program, 315 plus, and you're in a safe space. Probably a little random, but what are any major culture changes that you feel we should be aware of while going to the MS in US? The culture changes have to do with your daily life, not essentially with the people that you deal with, right? The US is no matter what people say, right? The whole truth is the US is the most welcoming country towards immigrants because it's a land of immigrants, right? It's your professor is probably going to be Indian. Most program deans are Indian at this point in time, so they're very, very open to immigration. That is not the problem you're going to face, right? The thing that you're going to face is that they're going to be oversharing, over polite. Like once you get into a lift, they're going to say hi and good morning to you, and they're going to ask you how your day is and stuff like that, which might seem okay, a little intrusive, but in the end, it gets a little sweet overall, right? But what is going to hit you hard is your own personal adjustment, right? You're going to be hit with an assignment, right? You at start class on the first day, it's not going to be introductions and what is your name. It's going to be a class and an assignment thrown at you, and an expectation to be delivered in a week later, right? You have to go back, you have to cook, you have to wash your own clothes, you have to clean your own home. I know some of you might be working full-time already and living independently, but living independently in India versus living independently in the US is a very, very different deal, right? There literally everything has to be done by you, and that might be a little different, that might be even a little difficult initially to adjust to it, but eventually one gets used to it overall, right? So I don't think it's going to be your own adjustment that's going to be a little different overall, rather than how the people around you are going to treat you as such. Is it true that opportunities in Virginia and Washington are predominantly government related? Yeah, because government hires a lot. Is it, if that, and if true, how is that going to impact international students? Why, if you go to a university in Virginia or near Washington DC, like a Georgetown or something of that sort, it's not like you'll apply only to companies there. No, people who graduate from Georgetown, people who graduate from the University of Maryland at College Park, they go work in the Silicon Valley also. So, I mean, yes, you're not going to have as many opportunities in that area, but there is a thriving private sector there as well, and it's a beautiful part of the country to be in all respects. Weather, safety, general attitude of the people. Very very nice place to be. So yeah, I don't think it's going to impact you that much. It's not a terrible location. It's not like you're studying in the middle of Idaho where it doesn't offer you any locational advantage. But yeah, you're not going to be hired by a government organization. But who's restricting you to apply only to companies in that area? All right. Why would you avoid cybersecurity? I think I've answered that already. Some suggested to take MIS, information science. Yes, that is another option. You can do CS or an MIS. Some MIS programs have more cybersecurity electives, and that university is going to be very, very strong for the specific outcomes you're looking at, right? Because it's not a very common elective pool MIS for cybersecurity, but those options exist. But that is a decent option as well. Whoever suggested that to you has given you a decent suggestion. If the US heads to war, how will it impact the job market immediately in the long run? I think we tend to forget that the US has been in some war or the other for the last, since the Afghanistan invasion. So that is about 2001, 2002, right? So for 23 years, the US has been in some sort of war whatsoever. I don't see how that's going to impact the job market, especially considering the conflict is so far away from its borders, and the U.S. as a country has been, involved in wars that are not its own for a very, very long time. I don't know why. Maybe it's the compounding effect of so many stories in the media and stuff, but I don't see what that geopolitical issue in the Middle East has to do with the U.S. as a country, right? Sure, they joined the offensive and stuff, but do you think Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or somebody are going to care about that in terms of hiring and growing their capitalist needs? I don't think so, right? So this is a rather futile question to ask. Conflict somewhere in the Middle East, even if the US is involved with it, is not going to affect the very capitalistic driven economy of the US as such. So if you're making decisions on basis of that, there is never going to be a perfect situation to go to a foreign country, right? Like, of course, I wouldn't say go to Israel and do a master's degree now. That would be not wise. But if that kind of situation is something that you're looking for in the US, you're never going to go for a master's degree overall, right? Because they're going to be involved in some conflict or some issue somewhere, because they are, probably politically the most influential country in the world. So, yeah, that's I don't think that should be a basis for decision making. I'm surprised that this question is even popping up. All right, some PGP-YL questions. ISB-YL, based on your experience with the admissions committee. Look, first of all, the PGP-YL, just one set of intake is done, it was just announced last year, the program, right? But generally, I can give you insights based on the YLP, right? The YLP was basically a certain number of seats set aside for students without work experience or less. No, the YLP was without work experience. Early entry was for people with less than 2 years experience. So for YL, it was essentially people in their third or fourth year of college who are applying to ISB, but who would start their program after gaining 2 years of work experience, right? But they would join the same class as somebody who's applied to the traditional intake. It was all the same 1-year program. So based on that information and based on last year, you'll have to understand that ISB, the single most important factor for somebody with less work experience is your GRE or your GMAT score, right? You have to have a very, very strong GRE or a GMAT score in order to make it for the PGPYL. My recommendation in general is for you to maybe think about giving the GRE, because the GRE keeps a lot of other degrees open as well, whereas a lot of MS programs, in case you decide to change your mind, don't accept the GMAT, all right? Whereas GRE versus GMAT, there is no bias in terms of getting into ISB, in terms of getting into foreign MBA programs, in terms of getting into foreign finance programs. They accept both with the same openness, open arms, whatever it is, right? And traditionally, with the focus edition coming in, I've heard from a lot of students that the GRE is just easier than the GMAT at this point in time. So high GRE or a GMAT score necessary, right? What is that going to be? GRE of at least a 325 plus for them to take you seriously. And if you're looking at the GMAT focus edition, you want to be above a 665, 675, around that mark, right? Which again, it might be wrong slightly with the translation. You're looking at a 710, 720 overall on the older GMAT scoring pattern. But that is what you will need. Second, if you're applying specifically for the YL, they do consider greatly the tier of the education institution that you're coming from. It doesn't mean that if you don't come out from a top tier undergrad, you won't get in. But if you're not from a top tier undergrad, then your GPA needs to be extremely strong, right? Because you have limited work experience. These are the few factors that are going to help them see how strong your fit you're going to be. It is very Indian in the thought process, right? Grades, marks, percentage. That's just how ISB has been, not just for PGP, YL, or the Young Leaders program, but for overall their PGP as well. The GRE or the GMAT score is the biggest factor. All righty. Wow, how's the job market for finance graduates in upcoming years? Depends on which country you're going to. I told you in the US it's strong. Hiring and career outcomes placements from good universities have been near 100%. As a result, the number of students applying for MS finance programs in the US has grown a lot. France is decent. The UK was good, not anymore. But even if you do want to keep that as an option, only look at LBS, LSC, Cambridge, these level of universities, not even the others, right? Something like a Warwick and all, I would not recommend at this point, right? But the US is strong. For finance, always I recommend a year or two of prior work experience. Don't apply as a fresher, because recruiters would want to see some sort of industry experience if they're going to seriously, offer you that job. All right. Also, by the way, all of you guys, if you have any of these queries, you can get them answered, one-on-one. You can get a free consultation call on www.gradvine.com. Right. So you can log on to our website, and you can see that www.gradvine.com. It's as simple as that. You can schedule a free consultation call there with my team at any point in time and have your questions answered at your convenience. And I hope that you're seeing that my advice is very transparent and practical. That's the advice you're going to get throughout at Gradvine. Right? We're not going to try and sell you, anything at this point in time. Sorry, I'm just trying to find the right question. See, I don't know if I should answer this question again. Maybe you joined the live late, but I did dive into cybersecurity in some detail, right? But I'll just give you a brief run through in benefit of doubt in case you joined late. Cybersecurity was not as strong initially because of additional security clearances that a lot of candidates had to get in order to be hired for that role. And therefore, if you're an international student, you do not hold an American passport. Holding an Indian passport or any foreign passport, getting that requisite security clearance to clear that final step of getting your job was always going to be difficult and a pain. And that's why a lot of companies were not recruiting international candidates. But I've interacted with folks from Amazon, Microsoft, Google, the big players, while I was in the US in the last month. And they said over the last year, there has been an upswing and a demand for cybersecurity professionals, and therefore they've been looking at people who are dependent on H-1B visas and are foreign nationals for get in, right? So recently, the scope has been good, but the trend or the market has not been around for so long for me to recommend it with that level of confidence. So I would still try and keep it broader. I would say apply to a core computer science degree, take your electives in cybersecurity. After that, you can still crack those roles. If not, you have the general CS to fall back upon. If not, maybe you're not eligible for a CS degree for whatever reason. Maybe look at an MIS or an information systems degree, and again take electives in cybersecurity and move it there, right? All right, I've completed BTech in CSE with 6.2 GPA. I've earned 4.5 years of work experience as a data scientist with a GRE of 320. I'm interested in analytical and MS operations research in the USA. Don't do operations research unless you want to go get into research later on and you want to keep the option of a PhD open. If your idea is to break into the job market and get a job, which I don't know. Again, we don't have context on that. It's better that you stick to a MS in data science. Far better job prospects overall, and more companies looking at that skill set pretty much. Is by US getting more challenging these days? again, I understand your apprehensions with the stoppage of the visa slots and stuff, but the visa slots are open, people are getting jobs. I don't think that should be a reason for you to eliminate again the largest economy in the world where you'll most definitely get a job after you graduate. But and language barrier in France and Germany, yeah, there is a massive language barrier in Germany, a little less so in France. Any other options in MS Finance? No, my friend. Like I told you about the UK, there's no language barrier and it's perceived as more friendly. But they're even reducing their 2 year stayback period, right? Because most folks who are going there are just working in supermarkets, and they're working at petrol pumps and stuff like that, and they're 2 years to pay off their cost of education because there is no hope or scope or belief that they're going to get a job, right? So UK, no, that's another country where language is not an issue. Okay, you'll have universities in Ireland where language is not an issue, but Ireland doesn't have a very strong hiring scene in finance either, right? So just make a rational decision. If you're looking at an MS in finance, look at the US, and if you really really don't want to go to the US for whatever reason, then honestly France is your only other viable destination. And even in France, you're not going to have even 20% of the number of job opportunities that you're going to have in the US, right? I'm giving that alternative because you asked for an alternative, and this is a decent one where you at least have some hope and scope. But the US is not getting that much more challenging that you completely shift countries. If your desire is to get a job and make money, the US is still the place you'd want to go to, my friend, overall. Alrighty. How was MS in mechanical engineering plus MBA plus masters in, I think MBT is that new business technology program from Purdue. See, I don't recommend dual degrees. The second thing is, when I was on campus, I realized and I was told that the entire business school is being restructured. Earlier, Purdue's business school used to be called the Cranard School of Management. The Cranard School of Management exists in some way, shape, or form, but they offer only certain degrees. Then they've started the new Daniel School of Business, which is offering this MBT. Basically, it is a little bit of a mess only at this point in time. I would wait before I go into that, anything business related from the business schools at Purdue, because I don't think most people are sure where Cranert is, where Daniels is, what career services does what and stuff like that. And I would stay away from that dual degree at this point in time. If you are looking at like honestly, if you're looking at an engineering plus a business degree, you're ignoring perhaps one of the best engineering management programs that exist in the world, where people are getting co-ops from their second semester onwards, right? You'd want to do an engineering management degree. That's probably the strongest program overall in terms of career outcomes. So strongly look at the MEM. I'd much rather do that, even though it's extremely selective. Their acceptance rate is among 1% in single digits, right? Under 10% overall. But if you get in, there's nothing better than that overall. And we had I think about 23-ish students from Purdue make it to that program in previous years. Not previous years, just last year, by the way. We've had hundreds in previous years. But definitely look at that. Definitely look at that. All right, I wish to break into product management, but at the same time, skeptical about the job market as compared to CS. I have a bachelor's in CS and 4 years experience as a software developer. You're a perfect fit for product management. See, the problem with these perceptions of tech and CS having all the jobs, it's not that simple, right? Of course, there are more developers needed in companies than product managers or managers, right? Because you'll have one product manager managing maybe 5 computer scientists overall, right? That's why the difference you have to make is, if you go to MS and CS at any top 50 university, you're fine. But if you want to go into engineering management, because the number of roles are fewer, you want to be in one of those top 15, 16, 17 programs overall, right? And you cannot really at this point hope to break into product management as a fresher. So if you're a fresher and say, I want to break into the product management field, let's say, boss, that's not likely. You might, even if you want to do an MEM, you must more likely will want to start off at an analyst role and then become a product manager or 2 or 3 years, right? But with a bachelor's in CS with 4 years of experience in SDE, if your interest is in product management, then by all means do a degree that is relevant to product management, because you will break into those sort of roles. You probably will even earn more, right? With the right profile at the right time at the right place, 100% you'll have better opportunities in product management. We have to get out of this mindset that only CS rules. Of course, CS does, but if you don't want to do computer science, how are you going to convince people during the job search and interview process and all of that that is the role you want to do, right? Because they're really going to see how passionate and driven you are during the recruitment process. So if you want to break into it, don't think that tech has more opportunities, so I will go there, right? If you love CS, you want to continue in tech, that's a different thing. But we already become engineers before we realize what we actually want to do in life. Don't make that mistake with a master's degree. The US job scene is not going to be friendly to people who are trying to break into roles that they're not truly interested in, right? You get found out there. How are MIM programs of ESSEC, HEC, ESCP worth it if I don't get into top 10 MS, MIS programs? First of all, with your profile, Yash, I would be very, very surprised if you don't get into a top 10 MEM, MIS program. We've had, like I told you, if you see our stats, right, we fill out half the classes at the top. I don't even say top 10. We don't bother tracking for the others apart from the top 7-ish. We fill out half the classes there, right? And we've had enough and more profiles make it with the right materials, right? It's very, very important. People with 9 points get rejected the same year. Somebody with a 7.5 gets into some of the top MEM programs, right? And your GPA is, while the GPA is important and your GPA is good, the materials have to be correct. So I don't see why, if you do the process well, why there be a situation where you won't get into a top 10 MEM or MIS program. We've seen too many profiles with good materials make it to top 10 MES, MIS for the last 7 years now, right? So if you're looking at these programs as an alternative, you don't have to worry about it, because I think you're in a fairly safe boat if you're targeting a top 10. MIM programs, at only one that is worth it is HEC. The others with their 2 years of workings may not even take you, and secondarily, they're not worth it, right? I think MIMs are not as strong a degree as an MEM because of the domain expertise that the MEM gives you, right? So I would not prefer an ESSEC or an ESCP over any top 10 MEM or MIS program in the US. HEC maybe, and that too if you want to break into management consulting, finance, or those sort of areas. If you want to stick to product, project, program management, I don't see the value or the meaning in looking at that MIM also. All right, what are some of the best MS industrial engineering that don't require the GRE? This year's GRE requirements are not out yet, and industrial engineering programs yo-yo here and there. But some good ones where it was optional in previous years, you can most certainly look at USC. The best ones are Georgia Tech, University of Michigan, absolutely strong. You have Texas A&M, absolutely terrific. Purdue has a very good industrial engineering program. Some of the slightly lower tier ones which are cheaper also. Clemson is one which is very, very underrated, very, very strong, right? If you want something cheap and very, very safe, then the State University of New York at Buffalo, again, very underrated, strong industrial engineering program. All right. I have a 9.13 GPA in MEC, 2 years of WorkX. I'm confused between industrial and MEM if I plan to come to India after working 2 or 3 years after masters. All right. First of all, if you're looking at the implication of picking MEM versus industrial engineering, in the context of what is going to help me more when I come back to India, doesn't make a difference. CES, MEM, IE, whatever. Just the master's degree, if you come back to India, won't hold as much value. But if you get work experience, that plus the degree will add a lot of value for you to get that career boost eventually when you come back, right? Industrial engineering is a very promising degree, and in fact, industrial engineers have been getting a lot of the jobs in over the past year. The reason being, you think, okay, everybody's saying job market is bad, job market is poor. Not the entire job market is not bad. It's already recovering across sectors, but for the last 1 year, there's been a significant boom in operations and supply chain jobs, right? Absolutely strong. And industrial engineering and MEMs also send people into operations and supply chain. And if you're a mechanical engineer, I'm assuming with a 9.13 GPA, your campus placement also would have been decent. So you're working in something core and not at an Infosys or a TCS or whatever. So with your core experience plus an industrial or an MEM, if you want to break into operations and supply chain, the job market has been very strong, and it will be continued to strong, right? So in that regard, industrial and MEM will give you very similar outcomes. But what are the differences? MEM will be more expensive, right? If you're looking at a cheaper program, then MEM does not have too many cheap options, because with MEM, you have business school electives. Anytime a business school elective or a business school component comes in, the costs go up, right? So MEM as a degree is more expensive, industrial is cheaper. But industrial also will only push you into manufacturing, operations, supply chain. MEM will give you a little bit broader, right? If you want to get into tech consulting, it opens it up. If you want to go into project management at something like an Amazon, that opens up. If you want to get into product management at a manufacturing firm, that opens up. If you want to break into what program management roles, right, at a tech company or a logistics company, that opens up, right? So the number of opportunities are broader. Industrial makes you go narrower, but if you're okay staying narrow, it's absolutely fine, because industrial is not as narrow as a civil engineering or a cyber security. With industrial, you can break into automotive manufacturing, you can break into pharma, you can break into the oil and gas industry. Lot of scope there, right? Still broad enough, but much narrower than an MEM. I hope that makes sense. Of course, I'm sure we have so many more doubts and queries that you'd like us to answer. With your profile, we had multiple people make it to the top 5 MEM programs, the top 5 industrial engineering programs, provided the materials are good. If you have any queries, and for holds too for holds true for all of you. I'm almost going to be done with this live in about 5 minutes. We already overshot the time, and I'm not been able to answer a lot of questions, because there are so many. Always is the case with the live. You can always log on to www.gradvine.com and schedule your free consultation call, right? And you'll have all your questions answered one by one in great detail and interest by my team. And that information, trust me, is going to be more transparent and more useful than you can get by a paid service anywhere else in the industry as well, right? That is my guarantee. Of course, don't come in there and say, give me a short list of 10 universities, right? They can't do that. They're not mentors, right? They give you a general idea and gist of what is going on and what tier of universities you can target. But the more detailed stuff, you'll have to work with our mentors who are graduates of the top universities the world over. I'm going to take a couple more questions and I'm going to wrap it up. Let me see, cover a couple of these. All right, I'm going to be a little selfish and answer this. All right, can you please tell me how many employees there are in Gradvine? And don't call us a consultancy. That's the worst term. I know consultancies do such bad things, so we steer away from that term. So we have about 25 full-time employees at Gradvine, but those are not the ones counseling you, right? The mentors are people who are at a top master's degree, who've either done the process through us and they understand the secrets of writing the SOP and the secrets of what an admissions committee wants to see. And because they're at the university, they know what career outcomes the elective gives you. They've interacted with the admissions committees folks, because they're usually the program directors, and they know what they like in terms of candidates, and therefore they're giving you that inside information, right? The mentors also, if you sign up early enough, June, July, maybe until August, are people who've been helping students make it to the top universities for the last 2 or 3 years. So somebody who has insider information, somebody who's helped a number of students crack the top programs, and somebody without bias, most importantly. Every other consultancy outside has tie-ups with universities, right? And they get commissions anywhere between $2,000 to $5,000 if you join a particular university and you pay the tuition fee there. And obviously, these are not going to be very good universities. So we do not have any tie-ups of that sort. So our mentors are only trying to get you into the top-notch university, right? Now, that being said, okay, we don't just randomly assign you to a mentor who's at a university and leave you with the process. You're also given an account manager who's a full-time employee of Gradvine and who's had years of experience with these processes to help you out with the logistics of the process. All right, so how do you get an application fee waiver? They'll tell you the best way, right? How do you write an email to a university to check your eligibility at the right time? They will tell you a way. When do you start filling your applications? How do you start filling your applications? What kind of essays can you expect? What is your internal timeline to break down and finish everything, right? So the account manager is somebody who's a process expert. Your mentor, who's going to be assigned to you for the SOP, and your LORs and your additional essays, is a content and a technical expert, right? So we make sure that you don't miss any deadlines, because there's multiple people pushing you, and all of this happens on the easiest format, for all of you to be on one platform, which is WhatsApp, right? So your mentors on that WhatsApp group, your account managers on that WhatsApp group, our head of operations is on that WhatsApp group. So everything you need access, you need responses, all of that happens over text. It's not like you send an email and say, okay, we'll give you an appointment 2 weeks later on a Thursday, show up at that time, right? It's a far more friendly process. If you look at our reviews on Google also, you will see that the account managers are mentioned in a very friendly manner, because they form a bond, right? And that happens between students and mentors as well, right? Is it you and Suraj will help people directly if we want that? We do not have the time and the bandwidth, and you don't want to be dealing with our schedules. to help out with the application process. But if you do put in a request, then we can help you out with your shortlist, or we can help you out with the final review of your documents after the mentor has worked on it, and after our internal editing team that sits down full time, that reviews hundreds of SOPs every year from an admissions committee's point of view, approves it, right? Again, it's not just the mentor approving the SOP and we are saying it's good to go. It goes through multiple rounds of checks. If you want the additional layer of checking after the process is done from Suraj or I, we can help that happen as well. And that is why I sort of wonder with people bargaining for a 2,000 rupee discount, 3,000 rupee discount, and some of our competitors do Diwali dhamaka and give 30,000 off, because at the end of the day you're a metric and a sale to them, right? They don't care about what happens with the process afterwards, right? But we value our time and our service. So instead of negotiating with 2,000 or a 3,000 or a 5,000 rupee discount, for a process that is going to take you into a degree and a university that's going to change the rest of your life, where you're spending a ton of money, instead of bargaining for the 2,000 or 3,000 or 5,000, which is not going to matter like a month later, definitely not going to matter after you get your dream admit and eventually move on to the job search. Ask for additional help or additional offerings or additional involvement from somebody, right? And that is going to help you a lot more. That's a better negotiating tactic. I know it seems great to get a 2,000 discount or whatever, but how does it matter? You're not bargaining for vegetables here. This is an investment in your future, right? So that is how we function. And that is the reason why, because there's a structured process and we understand how admissions committees think, and your mentors know that as well. We have such a high rate of success. 98% of all our paying customers make it to a top 50 university, 88% to a top 30, and more than half, 54%, make it to a top 10, right? We also vet and screen profiles of who we take on. We don't take on everybody and anybody into the process, because we want to maintain that standard and metric as well. We don't want to go into the mass market of sending 500 people to Arizona State, essentially, right? So yeah, because I spend so much time doing my own marketing, I'm going to answer a couple more questions. I think that's only fair. All right, this is a very compelling, pressing question of interest to all of you, and I like taking the tough questions. I don't take the silly ones. Hi, sir. I've come across many universities in the US saying it's tough to get a job after masters. I'm assuming this is mostly the case for grads from lower rank universities. To top university grads face similar issues. So the job market has been, like I said, it's been going up and down over the past year, right? And there have been phases where companies were putting in a little bit of a hiring freeze. Let me go into a little bit of detail and end it with this, right? Because it'll give you a lot of perspective as to what is happening with the job market. And I'd like all of you to pay attention, right? Like, keep your ears open. I hope you're not just scrolling randomly and not listening to this, but this is the reality of why the job market has been the way it is over the last year, right? What happened was COVID was a lull. It was down. Companies were not sure what was going to happen. Once COVID went away, right, and consumerism increased, and people got used to digital products and tech everywhere, right? Like, even 70-year-olds started using Uber Eats and DoorDash and started booking appointments for various things over the phone, right? All these big tech companies, your Amazons, your Metas, your Googles, all of them went absolutely overboard, assuming that we have to be at the forefront of this tech adoption and we have to hire like mad. What happened afterwards is, because less people joined in 2020 and graduated, few only foreigners and people, tech guys, graduated into the market in 2021, 2022. The people who were there, irrespective of their skill set, were hired for insane salaries, right? Absolutely insane salaries. I was hearing freshers getting 150, 160K, which was absolutely mental, right? These numbers have not been heard, and they're not going to be heard since, right? But once they started hiring these people en masse at large scale, they started realizing that this entire tech adoption was not going to hold fruit, right? It was not going to hold forth, rather, right? Then the other thing that happened, the double whammy, was the US started experiencing an inflation, and not a major inflation, but a slight inflation, because of some wonderful policies by the previous regime, right? And again, I'm not here to give a political discourse, but those of you who are worried, okay, this is happening and that is happening now, it was a lot worse previously because the economy was going into a bad state, right? Now, when inflation increases, the cost of everything increases, right? People are looking and thinking from a tendency to save. They're not going to spend. When consumerism reduces, what happens? A lot of companies that are selling consumer goods are gone. At the end of the day, Meta, Amazon, Google, all of these largely are driven by ad revenue. Now companies stopped giving ad revenues itself, and therefore not only did that boom that they expected not happen, but even the existing spending reduced from various B2B and B2C sectors because of inflation. Then they started laying people off because they started hiring them at insane salaries. Now, what happened after that is, okay, there is a situation where a whole bunch of engineers have been laid off and are looking for jobs. People who went into university in 2022 started graduating 2023 end and 2024. They entered the job market. The layoffs happened. Now, suddenly there's a glut of engineers with a lot of similar skill sets for a very similar number of jobs, not the boom that they were experiencing at that point in time, right? Because of this, supply and demand mismatch, there were a lot of people who were looking for jobs not getting jobs because there were too many engineers for that period and not as many jobs overall, right? Cut to about November, December of last year, things stabilized. The elections were done, the uncertainty was done. Trump was all pro-capitalist. Companies were looking to hire again. Things started going up. But then the bluff, which we know is a bluff now, the tariffs were announced. And at that point, it was not like these companies were in a bad economic state or their stocks were falling or they could not hire. They were just in a wait and watch mode. Like, okay, let's see what the implications of these tariffs are going to be, and then we'll hire later on, because you don't want to hire if something goes wrong, fire again. They burnt their fingers once, right? So then when it started recovering, the tariffs came, they went on to a hiring pause. Now that everybody has realized the tariffs are just a bluff and a negotiating tactic, the hiring has gone back to normal again and people are getting jobs. Now, in this entire situation, what is the situation of people with top universities and not top universities? When the situation was really bad with the inflation and the hiring freeze and the layoffs, irrespective of which university people were in, at that point people were suffering, right? The difference was because of the level of support from career services, the network, the reputation of the university, cold messages on LinkedIn just having a lot of value. If you have a university tag in your name, people from the top universities were able to secure jobs. I wouldn't say easily, but a little better off than people who came from no-name universities, right? And the difference is everybody struggled. People from top universities took, and programs, again, not just top universities, good programs, they took longer to secure a job, though they faced difficulty, but they did secure a job. But people from really low ranked universities did not have that luck, right? And that, I think, is going to be the case and the key in future. If you go to a good university, otherwise don't go. If you're going in, I'll go into a low ranked university, I will get into a job consultancy, the job consultancy will sponsor my H1B and send me for odd contract jobs, then that world is gone, my friend. I don't think the US is going to be an economy for that. Unfortunately, if there are 100 people going to the US, only 15 people maybe max go to a good university. I'm not saying top tier. The remaining 85% go to absolutely nonsense. If you want proof of that and see a live example, I'm not bluffing with these numbers. We did a YouTube video saying that blacklisted universities are chances for visa rejection, and we said comment your university below and we will tell you whether it's a risk for a visa rejection or no. And even with your limited knowledge, please leave the names in those 400 comments. I have not heard of a lot of those names, and I've been in this industry for 7 years. If you go to places like that and say, I am not getting a job, and then you complain about it and write on Reddit and come on YouTube and you make videos saying, oh, there are no jobs, of course you won't get a job, right? You went with no intention of going to a place that is going to help you upskill and get you a job in the first place, right? And that world and that situation is gone. You don't want to be in that situation. If you want to go to a cheap university, finish at the cheapest possible way, and just immigrate by hook or by crook, you're going to be in a lot of trouble later on. You will be writing on Reddit a year and a half later. Always, if you go to, I'm not saying Ivy League also, go to a top 30, top 40, top 50, right? Which is not very difficult to crack, right? And you will still be fine irrespective of where the job situation is. So that's the fundamental difference. And I would recommend you go and look at that video, look at the comments. That is why you have 85% of the people making that sort of noise. And the other thing is somebody who gets a job, right? Especially Indian mentality. In the US is not going to talk about it, right? They're not going to put it up on LinkedIn until months later, because who knows, something might go wrong, right? Kisi ki nazar lag jayegi, right? Or in Telugu we say dishti or whatever, right? Why announce it? Why talk about it? Let's just be quiet and do it. People who have jobs and all of that are not going to write on Reddit and they're not going to make a noise. 85% of the people are going to crap universities, are going to say, yeah, it's dead and it's bad and all of that. At the end of the day, if you're going to the US or any foreign country, you are taking a chance. There is an element of risk. If you're doing everything properly, you're mitigating that risk. If you're doing anything in a haphazard manner, trying to cut corners, make life easy, you are increasing the chances of the risk, and the repercussions come back to bite you in the back overall, right? So that would be my parting take on this entire thinking about studying abroad part. I just want to announce to you guys also, because you have so many of these questions, and okay, how much ever convincing my explanation is going to be, your attitude is going to be, okay, this guy runs a consultancy, he wants to send us abroad, so where is the credibility, right? Maybe you're thinking like that. Even though, like I said, you want to apply to Ireland, you want to apply to UK, my job is easier, right? You can just walk in, there'll be one SOP, you'll get your admit in 2 weeks, right? And I can charge money and say you're going to Russell Group University, or all the nonsense that the other guys market just to trap you, right? But what we are doing, and the gist of it is, I'm setting and bringing together panels, right, of admissions committees, career services, alumni, professors at some of the good universities, the top universities. And we are doing a live one-on-one interview where I'll be asking them questions, they'll be answering my questions, they'll be answering your questions about the job market, how to go about it, what are the median salaries, right? What is the career growth of people over 5 years, and why do people think of a master's degree in the US? What is the American dream all about, right? So we are doing that so that you can hear straight from the horse's mouth. And registration for all you guys is free. We were actually debating whether we should make it a session only for paid students of Gradvine, but we took a call that we'll keep it open to everybody, because at the end of the day it benefits you, and I don't want you listening to nonsense consultants scaring you and selling you stuff, right? Again, that webinar, we give you transparent information, and we trust you to make the call. Nobody's pushing you to go to the US, nobody's pushing to go to Ireland, whatever. It is your call at the end of the day. As counselors, as mentors, our only job is to give you the most accurate information and present it in front of you, present the facts in front of you, and then you make a decision overall. That's how we do our university shortlisting as well. We tell you the pros and cons and the nitties and gritties of every single university on there, and very logical why we recommended one over the other. But if you want to apply to another place over the other, the call rests with you at the end of the day. We just present facts. We are not here to sell you stuff or push you in a direction. And those webinars, I think we are going to do one on July 2nd and one on July 9th, and then some more over the rest of the month. Similar topics, similar questions, just multiple different perspectives. Keep your eyes peeled. Join our WhatsApp group for that. That's the best place where we announce these webinars. If not, follow us on LinkedIn. Follow me on LinkedIn. You'll find me posting about it, and you can sign up. And if you sign up, show up, right? If you say, oh, can I get the recording? I hate that. First of all, like, okay, you might have 100 different commitments, but why did you sign up in the first place then, right? So all the resources, all the avenues, the free call, the webinars, the YouTube lives are all available to you. It is up to you to be prompt with it and show up for all of them and gather the information, right? So yeah, I'll end with that. It ran way longer than I expected, but join those webinars. Those are going to be super useful. If you can't wait for that long for whatever reason, which is fair, you can always schedule a free consultation call, www.gradvine.com, at your convenience. If you don't have internet and you can't access the website, at which point I don't know how you're attending this live, but yeah, you can also text us on 9000081081. That's again 9000081081, and have a call with our team. Even though the scheduling the free consultation is a far more efficient way to go about the process. So I will wrap up here. I hope that this was a good session and you gained a lot of information that you want. And I will hopefully see you in a couple of weeks' time. So all the very best, guys, and we look forward to hopefully working with a lot of you over the year through one-on-one consulting as well. So all the very best, and have a wonderful Sunday night, guys.